Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Lancelot. Lance is an assassin in SMITE who's good in both the jungle role and solo lane role, and focuses on lots and lots of damage, with a lot of range and decent CC to boot. Build-wise, you're either going full damage or full bruiser, no in-betweens on Lance. Either you intend on one-shotting someone with your combo, or you intend to harass the backline and do things death by 1,000 cuts style. It really just depends on how easily you can kill the enemy backline. Will they die in one swift combo? Go full damage. But if you know they'll either immune it or get peeled off by their teammates, go bruiser. And of course, if you're in the solo lane, you only want the bruiser build. Relics wise, it's pretty cut and dry. You want Blink and then Beads and Jungle every single last time. And then the solo lane, you want Sunder to help you kill targets and Horrific Emblem to help you kill targets. Shard wise, Claw Shard actually isn't bad, but as usual, Horn Shard is the safe bet. Let's get into a really neat passive in SMITE. Lance gets 1 stack of his passive for every god kill or assist, and gains 1 stack for every 5 minion kills. And that's actual minion kills, not just minions dying nearby you. Which is what makes Jungle Lance better at stacking this passive. It's part of what makes Solo Lane Lance a little harder. This passive caps out at a massive 60 stacks, meaning that this is something you'll be working towards for the entirety of the game. Each stack provides movement speed to Lance while he's on his horse, and while off the horse he gains damage reduction against basic attacks, but only while facing the basic attacks head on with his shield. It's a very cool passive, but it's not actually something you have to think about. It's sorta. As I mentioned, Lance is a very in-your-face combo-heavy character, so this passive helps him just first get in range to do the combo with the movement speed, then have a better chance of survival with the basic attack reduction. So that's not the part you need to actively worry about. Although, keeping track of and maximizing the actual stacking of Lance's passive is very important, since bonus movement speed helps literally everything. It helps you farm faster, helps you rotate to ganks faster, helps you chase down targets more easily, helps you retreat more easily, and so on. It's easily the best stat in the game. So you want to try and strike a balance between getting involved in fights and power farming to get the passive stacked up more quickly. I don't think Lance is good for beginners, but I think once you get some footing in the jungle, Lance is a good god to learn since maximizing this passive means you're maximizing the jungle role. Let's help make all of this make more sense by talking about Lance's abilities. First off, his first ability. Lancelot dashes forward. That's all on its own. The magic happens when you hit an enemy with the ability. Upon hitting an enemy, he deals damage, obviously, but gains another charge of this ability that he can use for free within 3 seconds. And boy does this double dash do damage. But even better, you can basic attack between dashes to deal even more damage, and by that I mean literally 2/3 of a squishy target's life bar. To perform this, put the ability on instant or quick casting, hold down the basic attack button, then time the activation and reactivation with your basic attacks, activating and reactivating as soon as you see the basic attack connect. But sometimes it's really just best to do the double dash to get closer to your target and then fight it out from there. This also deals damage much more rapidly than basic attack cancelling, which when it comes to late game fights is sometimes better to make an opening for your team or force out panic aegis from your intended target. Because as I'm sure you can tell, this isn't much of a dash range-wise. As a matter of fact, that point at the end of the target is literal. You can actually dash on someone who's at max range, but it won't hit because the point at the end of the targeter didn't hit them. This is why it's best to use both Blink and Lance's other abilities to get you in range first, then CC them, and then combo off with this ability when you know it's going to land, because trust me, you're going to need both hits of this ability to land to kill someone. And finally, I know it's a short dash, but never forget that it is still a dash, and it can sometimes be the difference maker in getting out of bad situations. That second dash is obviously a factor too, so when retreating, try to get crafty and quickly find a way to get a double dash while keeping yourself at a safe distance, and try to mount onto your horse. Lance's horse is an important part of his kit, but first we have to talk about his second ability. Lance deals damage in a small cone AoE, then again in the same AoE as well as a larger cone, dealing even more damage. If enemies are in the innermost cone AoE on the first hit, they will be knocked back by the first strike. Then, if they are on the outermost cone of the AoE, the second strike will deal bonus damage, and like a lot of it. But don't worry, they'll still take damage even if they aren't in the outermost AoE. Just in the AoE is enough for the damage. You can achieve this double strike by, not moving. But if your enemy had any momentum, it might be a close call on trying to get that double hit with the bonus damage. So always try to adjust yourself so that you follow up easily and still get a double hit. This ability is obviously a great combo starter, but the fact that the enemy gets pushed away, and the fact that Lance has no other CC on this ability, or his first ability, means that you can save enemies with this ability as well as you can kill them with it. Of course you want to combo this ability with Blink, so Blink 2 towards your team, combo with your 1. Of course you don't need to Blink with the aid of your third ability. Lance mounts his horse, granting movement speed but is unable to strafe side to side, and can slow himself down by moving backwards. He also gains a ramping shield on the horse and is immune to all CCs other than stuns, and Lance is able to dismount the horse by cancelling the ability, making it have a mere 2-second cooldown. Lance is unable to use relics while atop the horse, but is able to use consumables such as health pots, but is unable to use things like wards. If Lance is stunned or has his shield depleted by taking too much damage, he is forced off the horse and it will have his normal 14-second cooldown. While on the horse, Lance has access to all 4 abilities, but all other than his ultimate are different. Lance's first ability on the horse has him dismount the horse, then fire a long-range projectile which damages and slows all enemies it hits, this projectile also going through walls. In his second ability on the horse, Lance roots all enemies in AoE around the horse, dismounts, leaps, and then crashes down, dealing damage, and Lance is able to steer himself with the direction keys as he lands to make sure he lands on the important target. Lance's third ability on the horse lets him quickly rotate 180 degrees, so even though he can't strafe or move side to side easily, he can still use this to change direction quickly. So naturally, this is the ability you want to be in most of the time as Lance, in order to get yourself around the jungle more quickly, and to give you the most options when starting ganks or in case you get caught. There are several billion things to look out for while on the horse, and it's what makes Lance difficult when you're first starting with him. So firstly, the shield ramps up as you ride the horse, so if you have any minions targeting you, whether in the lane or in the jungle, or any enemy gods on you, you will not be able to mount onto your horse, and even worse, if you try to mount, you'll just be kicked off it immediately and have one of your best tools be on a long cooldown. This is why I mentioned earlier, it's sometimes best to just double dash away into an enemy minion wave while you're being chased. This gives you just enough leeway to get onto your horse and gather up enough shield to try and mount and escape. Speaking of mounting, it's what you're going to want to do for most of the game. You want to be mounting, dismounting, clearing camps, and then remounting between buffs to give yourself maximum options. Just don't dismount after every camp. Just remount when you're going to go to a buff camp that's a significant distance away. Like say you're doing speed to green to XP camps. Just mount from out of base, dismount at the speed buff, and remount after the XP camp. In this situation, you can use the ability while on the horse to clear the camps, since by the time you're done farming, you'll have the horse back up. But this isn't true for every farming path in the game. So again, this is going to take a while. Let's touch on those abilities on the horse. The first ability on the horse is pretty simple. It's a very basic but effective combo starter. Once you're in range for it, use it, since you don't want to give the enemy team any opportunity to try and dismount you by getting too close to them. Then while they're slowed, walk up and combo with your 1 and 2, and this is the very basic gank combo you want to get down pat for early and mid game. But again though, be cautious about just running up to enemies and trying to slow them with this ability, since it'll give them a very easy opportunity to deal enough damage to get you off the horse before you can even cast the ability. Let's not forget about any stuns the enemy may have either. There are a lot of long range abilities that can tag you while you're on the horse and strip you off the shield, but more than anything is long range stuns you need to look out for. Things like Surtur 2, Anubis 2, Aphrodite 1. In fact, here's just a list of gods with long range stuns that you need to be careful of as Lancelot. If these gods have access to the long range stun, give them some respect and don't mount up in their face. Don't read into the way I wrote that. But if you see a long range damage or stun coming at you, don't forget about your second ability while mounted to avoid it. When I say Lance leaps, he really does leap and is immune for a very short window. This is difficult to time though, even more than someone like an Anhur or Gilgamesh, since Lance is actually immune for a much shorter period of time than those gods. This ability is going to take a lot of getting used to when compared to Lance's first ability on the horse, as you want to use it at different times depending on who you're trying to fight. So stick with the first ability on the horse for the most part when you're starting with Lance, but when you see an opportunity to immune something with the second ability, use it to get a good feeling for how the ability operates. And as for the third ability, well, Lance just kind of turns around, so I hope that one's self-explanatory. It also basically lets Lance stay on his horse for a little while longer, and not walking into an enemy tower. But on that note, it's generally not even a bad idea just to walk into a wall as Lance while mounted while waiting for a gank, as again, that shield takes time to ramp up, and without a maxed out shield, you may be stuck with just 2 abilities and no mounted abilities to gank with. Well, a lot of these issues can be rectified with the aid of Lance's ultimate, which as I mentioned, can be used while mounted as well as dismounted. Lance becomes CC immune and mounts the horse, then charges forward, creating a large AoE in front of himself that cripples all enemies while it's active. Lance's charge forward lasts for 1.25 seconds, and the area only lasts for 3 seconds, so, like his second ability on his horse, it's something you'll need to time if you're trying to capitalize on his properties other than his raw damage. That said, when it comes to damage, good god does he deal it. And even better, Lance remains on his horse with a full shield charge once the ultimate ends. This makes Lance a huge problem in the early and mid game. His ganks are very simple. Start mounted, either 1 or 2 depending on which is better for your intended target, 1 if they're more slippery with movement abilities or relics, or 2 if they lack movement abilities and or relics, then combo with your 1 or 2. Honestly, it doesn't matter in most situations if you 2-1-1, 1-1-2, or 1-2-1. Only very occasionally do you get into situations where you need to use one of those specific combos over another to get a kill. And then, once they use their movement ability or after you burn any relics, ult to chase them, and then again, use the best of your horse abilities to finish them off, usually the 1. Or if they're so slippery you can't start off a gank while mounted, this is where you can blink in and start comboing. Instead of just trying to use your 3 to mount, simply chase with your ultimate to get yourself mounted and combo from there. A good combo against skittish players is just to blink 2, hold onto your 1, and then make them use their movement ability. Then you ultimate, mounted 1, then combo with your regular 1. This is probably draining just to listen to, so you can imagine how much time it'll take to get used to while playing. But once you get it down, you'll quickly find how easy it can be to start running games as Lance. Don't be shy just to use the ultimate raw either to get combos started, especially against immobile targets who like to sit under the tower. You may not be able to get 2 mounted abilities off in one combo in this case, but you can basically do the combo in reverse order. Ult, mounted ability, then combo with 1 and 2, and this is usually still enough for a kill. In the late games where this ability can be tricky. It's a wonderful escape tool, obviously, but on that same note, you really aren't useful at all in the late game if you don't use this ability to deal boatload of damage to the enemy backline. Blinking as Lance becomes a lot weaker outside of the laning phase. Your only real option is blink 2ing, and with Blink's range not being great, and the push range being absolutely terrible compared to something like a Tyr or Hercules' first ability, you really do need to have a good ultimate to get back there and start wreaking havoc, instead of just using Blink for chasing. You want to try to time your ultimate in the late game after the initial engage happens, but you want to see at least one big ultimate used. This is to try and ensure you don't just get ulted as soon as you dive the enemy backline, but given this ability's cast time, it'll definitely take some too early and too late ultimates to get the timing down. And on that note, you really need to get in there with Lance and get your hands dirty. He can genuinely obliterate carries, but you really do need to throw caution to the wind to get it done more often than not and trade your life to get kills. And he's an example who really needs access to his purification beads to get the job done. That's all for a more damage-oriented Lance. As for Bruiser Lance, just run at them and be annoying. But the same rules about timing your ultimate apply here as well. Let's get some combos with Lance. 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. Three, two, two, one, one. Blink 2, basic 1, 1, 3 when it's safe, and 1. Blink 2, basic 1, 3, 1, 1. 3, 1, 1, 2, 1, ultimate 1. Three, 2, 2, 1, 1, ultimate 2. Basic 2, basic 1, 1, 3 when it's safe, ult 1 and chase with basic attacks. For ability leveling, you want your 2 at level 1, your 1 at level 2, and your 3 at level 3. From there you max your 1, your 2, then your 3. Leveling the ultimate at level 5, but holding off on leveling it until your 1 and 2 are maxed. Lance is easily one of the most unique assassins in SMITE, sharing the same ideas with other assassins of this ability is your CC, this ability is your damage, and this one's your chase down, but it's split up between both his mounted and unmounted abilities, making him tricky to learn but very satisfying to master. That said though, he's not without his weaknesses. Against too strong of a late game team, Lance, despite having a lot of damage, simply can't get his damage out quickly enough in some situations to be relevant, hence the bruiser build making him more of a persistent nuisance to important targets rather than a nuclear bomb. Teams with a lot of stuns alone aren't really enough to hard counter Lance, but if the enemy team just has too much range damage, Lance can struggle too, really relying on just ulting in, 2ing, and hoping for the best. And I haven't even touched on player-made walls yet. They are the bane of Lance's existence. A good Ymir wall can completely destroy any chance of Lance prancing his way into the enemy team's backline. And Yamoja and Terra aren't bad at stopping him either. With all that said though, if you want to pick Lance when the coast is clear of easy long-range stuns or easy walls, Lance can completely run over games, both figuratively and literally. 9 out of 10 mid laners and ADCs can only dream of being able to get away from Lance all on their own, and he wields the damage to flatten any and all of them, so it's up to you as the Lance player to make use of all the tools at your disposal to get it done. Lance's combos are like a puzzle, and the pieces change with every given match, but there's always a way to put the pieces together and get it done. It's just going to take a lot of practice to get better at understanding how those pieces fit together in every single situation. That's all I have on Lance for now. Thanks for watching.